most important issue facing Arlington, and what do you have in terms of your plans to do about it?
My answer may surprise a few people because it's not going to be something as obvious as some type of technical thing or some single issue. I think the single biggest issue that faces us is a sense that we are now competing one another for limited resources. It's my children's school or your playing field or your trees and open space or your transportation system, okay? And the first, I've been here almost 30 years. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, and for the first 25 years, I think there was generally a sense that, nothing happens fast in Arlington. There's always a lot of talk. That's the Arlington way, the process, for better or worse, and it certainly needs a lot of, reform, I think, and help. But if you, went along, your issue would eventually rise to the top. And because of that, the county board made a lot of promises. They took a long time to implement, such as the streetcar, which has now been canceled, the aquatic center, without necessarily paying attention to issues like growing school enrollment, when the trends were obviously there. And I'm somebody who appreciates the voice of dissent. I've certainly been it often enough, because I think that perspective has to be brought into bear. But I think the challenge is, again, finding how we can talk to each other, not at each other, and respect the fact that it's not you or me, but it's all of us. That we can have schools that will last for 60 years and can be community buildings that would be repurposed at a future date or have greater community access along the way, if changes, the children age and we don't need schools as much. Where we can have recreation fields that meet not just children, for example, but young adults and millennials. I think, again, working together and getting past that sense of competition. Thank you.
Andrew, the next question is the same. What do you think is the single most important issue facing Arlington, and what do you propose to do about it?
Thanks, Josh. For those of you who were with us on March 4th, when many of us launched our campaigns, I spoke most passionately about something that President Kennedy once said, is that the public confidence and confidence in government is the foundation of all government. If we do not have the confidence of our voters, then whatever policy that any of us propose, either this evening or as county board members, it becomes almost irrelevant. My first priority is to helping restore the public confidence. And the way that you do that, and the way that I've referenced already this evening, is by talking and more importantly, by listening. Obviously, we have some very significant challenges facing the county, and we are facing them almost concurrently. Our economic challenges, whether it's the vacancy rate, BRAC, Silverline, these are all popular recourses. Or whether it's a school population, which has increased 30% over the last 10 years. Our county population has increased 10 to 15%. But our county budget has increased 52%. And so how do we manage all of these growing and constrictions on our resources at the same time? Well, I think we have to return to what I said at the beginning. We have to work to restore the confidence through listening, by reasserting our shared community values, and by making sure that people understand that it's true. We don't live in a community where we can have it all, like I said in my previous answer. But we can live in a community with shared values where we can do some pretty amazing things. And how do I know this? Because Arlington has been doing amazing things for 40 years. We've made the right choices. It's in our DNA. So that's how I think. Thanks.
Next question.
Same question.
Housing affordability, I think, is the most important issue facing Arlington because I think it's an existential question about Arlington. Is whether Arlington continues to be a diverse community for all and not simply for the wealthiest. It's also an existential question for whether we can continue to attract commercial interest and commercial taxpayers because businesses know that they can't staff themselves entirely of CEOs. They're looking for a diverse workforce, and if we're looking for them, we need to be able to provide one. So, I think housing affordability remains the most important challenge facing Arlington, and I think we have to tackle it in a couple of ways. I think we've got some good commitments right now to try to replace lost market rate affordable units with committed affordable units. We do that with the Affordable Housing Ordinance and through our investments, leveraging our investments in the Affordable Housing Investment Fund. I think those are strong starts that we need to sustain and need to build on to make sure that we do have committed affordable in all corners of the county. But I think we have to acknowledge the reality that we are losing our market rate units, market rate affordable units at a dramatic pace. And we need to start thinking more innovatively about how we expand the supply. Let me give you one example of what I mean when I say think innovatively about how we expand the supply. The county right now is engaged in a pilot partnership with developers in Crystal City. The county's granted them zoning flexibility, and those developers are going to convert some vacant commercial space, we know we've got a lot of that in Crystal City, into micro units. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Maybe 22-year-olds are interested in living in Arlington if they can do it in a smaller place at a more affordable rate. I think those are the kinds of partnerships we need to be on the lookout for, looking for ways to pursue. They're non-dollar solutions that help us expand the supply of housing affordability to get to the most and existential issue facing Arlington.
Thank you.
Josh, I appreciate the question, but choosing among our many issues as to which is the most important is almost like asking me to choose which of my kids I love most. I'm not sure I can do it. But I'm going to bring up something that is critical if we're really going to attack or tackle any of our issues, and that's really changing our mindset here in Arlington. Now, we are a Democratic bastion in what was until recently a red state. We are in a metropolitan area where, because of other jurisdictions, we were far and away the best managed and most competently run. And as part of that, we developed somewhat of a bubble mentality, thinking that we were immune to kind of what everybody else had to go through. And as we've learned, just like everybody else, people in Arlington have had their income squeezed. Just like everywhere else, people in Arlington are facing increasing not only housing insecurity, but food insecurity. And we also have to recognize that for many people, they're really concerned about things that are not just big, like school capacity or affordable housing or transportation, but things that some would consider small, but are integral to quality of life, like crumbling sidewalks, like not having the ability to maximize the use of their own property in a way that would achieve them some cost savings as well as some flexibility. These are the kinds of things that Arlingtonians are crying out for. When I walk neighborhoods, people say, I want things to work. I want things to be fixed. And we have to recognize that we have to meet people where they are. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have to help people be more secure, and we also have to make sure that the things that they do every day in life are taken care of. That's the bread and butter of municipal government. Now, I'm not suggesting that we take our eye off of the big things, but we cannot neglect the small things, because for many Arlingtonians, those small things add up to quite a lot. So changing our mindset to address that competently, efficiently, figuring out when we need to plan thoughtfully and act decisively is critical as we move forward. Who's next, I think? Help me out, Josh. Thanks.
Most critical problem was the question?
What is the most important issue facing Arlington, and what is your proposal?
All right, the most important issue facing Arlingtonians is simply the growth of our county and our declining commercial tax base. How are we going to pay for all of the things that we talked about here this evening? If we do not increase our commercial tax base, the growth of this county will fall squarely on homeowners and renters. I won't be able to afford to live here. So that's the problem. How do we move forward? Specifically, we have to invest in infrastructure. That means schools, that means education and training, transportation, and an economic development plan that builds capacity for small businesses. How do we do that? Well, an example is we have an opportunity in 2018 that the bond comes before the voters for the Career Center. We take the 400 students at Arlington Mill Continuing Ed and put them in Crystal City in vacant space. attracting businesses where the workforce will be. And when I talk about new businesses, I'm talking specifically about small businesses. High growth entrepreneurship, clean tech, and digital startup companies. We have educated workforce, we have, unfortunately, vacant commercial space, 8 buildings in Crystal City, and we have access to finance because of good democratic governing over the years. We have a AAA bond. This requires partnership between the schools and the county, our elected officials throughout the county. This is our opportunity to move Arlington forward economically.
Well, it's going to be tough to be last in this list because all of these ideas are great. All of them are things we need to do, and I don't really disagree with a single one. But I think the biggest challenge to us right now is creating a strategic vision that encompasses all of these challenges. I think that we need to think globally about where are our schools going to be located and not argue about it indefinitely. I think we need to think strategically about our parks. Are we saving them? Are we picking them apart? Are we going to whittle away for other very valuable needs, very valuable purposes? These things, we need to have a vision. We need to agree on these things, and that will take quite a bit of deliberation and consensus amongst the county board. We need a strategic vision, particularly about our commercial real estate and our corporate tenants here. The real estate world works on attraction. We can't pay somebody to come. We need to attract them. We need a strategic vision of how we are going to leverage our assets, whether that's adjacent to National Airport, the Pentagon right amongst us, policymakers right across the river. We have a lot of assets, and I don't think that they have been properly positioned or exploited in the commercial real estate market. Nobody's eating our lunch. All of Northern Virginia is going through this crunch. The market will turn up, and we need to have a strategic vision about how we are going to be ready for it when it does.